For me, a couple of nights in the French Quarter of New Orleans was an opportunity to revisit the sights and sounds of my youth. I was glad to see the classic architecture with its picturesque balconies and galleries had survived the floods, and the partying crowds were always present, dressed not for Mardi Gras this time, but for Halloween coming up in a couple of days. Our group, a bit more sedate, took refuge in the posh private dining area of historic Brennan's restaurant, starting with cocktails and enlightenment before dinner. Our learned friend Pat led off with his thoughts on the economy.
We were not doing badly as these things go, getting into 2020. And then we had COVID. And that was one of the most incredible shocks. It's the biggest shock to the economy in my lifetime, by a long shot. And everything fell apart completely. And we had, in Keynesian talk, we had a huge shock to both aggregate demand.
Conversation continued non-stop as we headed for dinner on a private balcony overlooking the patio. I ordered filet chanticleer, which proved to be the best prepared steak I had ever had. Dessert was, what else? Bananas Foster, which had been originated by Brennan's years ago. When the dishes had been cleared away, the talk continued non-stop. And continued some more. Until it was time to leave. Now I was looking forward to some Dixieland music, or so I thought. Preservation Hall had closed earlier that night, but Pat O'Brien's bar, with its distinctive dueling piano format and famous hurricane drinks, was just as I remembered it. Except that the crowd was a bit younger by several decades, and the music was a bit newer. Certainly not Dixieland. Our man Bill poured his Tennessee school spirit into Rocky Top, but nobody seemed to mind.
Rocky Top, Tennessee. Rocky Top, Tennessee. Thank you so much.
At closing time, we found ourselves to be the last ones out of Pat O'Brien's, and we heard the door lock behind us. The next night, we went in search of another fancy dinner, this time at the venerable Antoine's restaurant, which dates from 1840. Antoine's is New Orleans' oldest restaurant, and arguably the oldest family-run restaurant in the country, now in the hands of its fifth generation. We relaxed over drinks and conversation, as usual, in the very exclusive escargot room. No surprise, the menu led off with Oysters Rockefeller, which had been created by Antoine's in a year when snails were not available. We went on to enjoy other Creole specialties with fancy French sauces and fancy French names. After 2 nights of gourmet dining, we considered ourselves properly spoiled. Back on the street, I thought I heard a bit of Dixieland. But no. Costumed revelers were just jamming to bring on a little Halloween spirit. Finally, we did hear some blues music coming from a club on Frenchman Street. Bamboula's was definitely a happening place, so we grabbed a table and ordered some beer. At last we had found a traditional New Orleans sound, but then the band changed. The music changed a bit, and the dance floor became very crowded. But the crowd was having fun.